several questions from the audience we're going to get to in just a minute. That wraps up the one-on-one conversation with Congressman Paul. Coming up next, we go to the audience, and later, from you at home. We'll be right back with Congressman Ron Paul after this quick break. And welcome back to Conversation with the Candidate. We are happy to introduce you to Representative Ron Paul. He's a Republican from Texas. He's joining us. Our in-studio audience has been sitting here eagerly awaiting their chance to ask some questions of the Congressman. So let's get right to it. Our first question here in the front row. Sir, please stand. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Craig Everett from Darien, New Hampshire. Congressman, we have thousands of young men and women who, as members of the National Guard, have served tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. They have served as full-time soldiers and suffered as full-time soldiers. However, they are not so classified by the Veterans Administration and therefore do not qualify for full veterans benefits. Would you support a change in policy so that these gallant men and women may be given all the tools to help them get their lives back on track?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the most serious problems we face today in general, the neglect of taking care of our veterans. They get good care and all, but we've just heard a lot of stories about what's happening down at Walter Reed Hospital and some of the neglect. And we fight it all the time in the congressional office. Veterans coming and not getting good treatment. Whether it was after Vietnam War with Agent Orange, they didn't get treatment for a long time. Oh, these people are just psychologically disturbed and they don't qualify. After time, then they recognize that Agent Orange. After Persian Gulf War, it was the Persian Gulf War syndrome. They weren't getting adequate treatment. So whether they're active duty or in the reserves or the Guard, if they serve and have a disability, they should get a lot more better treatment. It seems like I was called up to duty and I served for 5 years during the Cuban crisis. They call us up, they drafted us back then, but so often many veterans are forgotten. And this is something, I probably vote for less spending than anybody else in the Congress. But I never vote against funding. I think against veterans, I think we have neglected them and we need to do a lot more.
Greg, thank you for your question. Let's go to our next audience question. Sir, please stand. Give us your name and where you're from.
Boucher from Pembroke, New Hampshire. Congressman Paul, I know that you've been a staunch opponent of the Patriot Act. If elected, how would you work to repeal it?
How would I elect or try to get the Patriot Act repealed? You would try to influence the Congress to do it, to introduce legislation. You could look at the particular parts of it, the legalization of these searches and monitoring and the surveillance of the American people. You should challenge it in the court, and the president has this authority. So, and also not use it. If you feel strongly that some of these powers given to the president are unconstitutional, nobody forces a president to use them. So there's quite a few things you could do. But once again, attitudes have to be changed. Because if the American people are still saying, oh yes, it makes me feel good that the government can come in and spy on me without a search warrant, which some people thought that, after 9/11. That attitude has to change. But the president can do an awfully lot in leading the charge against these unnecessary searches and seizures and the type of things that they do. So I would do whatever I could. But ultimately, you would want the Congress to write a law up and repeal it. But in the meantime, a president should just ignore the parts that he's convinced are unconstitutional invasion of your privacy.
Steve, thank you for the question. Our next audience member, sir, please stand up. Give us your name, where you're from.
John Thing Jr. from Deering, New Hampshire. Congressman, my question is about health care. Health care costs are getting out of control, and a record number of Americans are uninsured. Recently, in the past few weeks, some of our largest corporations in the country, AT&T, Walmart, joined together with labor unions and healthcare advocates in calling for universal coverage within 5 years. And my question is, how do you plan on making healthcare, quality, affordable healthcare accessible to all Americans?
No easy task, but I've thought a lot about it, having been in medicine and politics. But universal health care, in my estimation, would be a total disaster. I mean, it's sort of like deciding, well, what if 10, 15 years ago we decided to have a universal program to deliver cell phones to everybody in the country? or computers or television sets. Those are left more to the marketplace. All of a sudden, what happens in the age of inflation when the dollar goes down in value, prices go down on almost everything except in electronics. They go down and everybody has them. So medicine, once the government gets involved in something and they give subsidies to it, it increases costs, not quality or availability. So whether it's education, we pump more money into education than ever before. And a lot of people go to school, but the quality of education goes down because the money goes to the bureaucracy. In medicine, it's the same way. You pump a lot of money into it, and third-party payments are going into and that causes costs to go up. Recently, under the prescription drug program that was passed recently, which I strongly objected to, because once again, the motivation was to give universal help to people, and I understand that. But the choices were to have sort of a national socialistic approach where the government controlled it and was universal, or whether it would subsidize the drug companies. Well, it turned out that the sort of fascist approach won out because the drug companies came. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying Congress, so they passed the kind where the drug companies now are making these many, many dollars. Once government gets involved, it's just horrible. Tax code, you could make some changes. You could have medical savings accounts and tax credits. You could do this. But the one biggest problem has been that businesses have been able to give tax deduction for given health insurance, but the individual can't. So they've been excluded. So the tax code could be improved tremendously to help the individual get the same benefit. But one disadvantage of putting it on, say, Walmart and these other places, all it does is push the prices up. And then our government, our companies in this country become less competitive. Then we can't compete with the imports. And that makes our problems worse. Nothing's for free. People think that if it's universal health care, it's for free. Nothing's for free. Sometimes it's hidden. Sometimes it helps big government and the bureaucrats. Other times it helps big corporations. I think it should be that we concentrate on how services and goods are delivered in a system that's free.
John, thank you for the question. Our next audience member, please stand. Give us your name and where you're from.
Mike Garofalo from Salem. Congressman, my question has to do with renewable energy. If you were elected president, what would you do to make our country more energy self-sufficient, and which types of renewable energy would you support?
I think the market makes all those decisions in a proper manner. I'm not smart enough, and let me tell you the Congress is not smart enough, and let me tell you the bureaucrats aren't smart enough to know which is the best. In a free market, pricing tells you everything. Let's say we didn't spend any money protecting our oil in the Middle East, and for some reason the price of oil went to $200 a barrel. You know, immediately we'd drive less, alternative energy would come in, and who knows what would come. I have a personal opinion. I happen to think that we have put too many roadblocks in front of nuclear energy. I think nuclear energy is clean. I think it's efficient and all these wonderful things. And you can get electricity out of nuclear. You can have electric cars, all kinds of things. But the most important thing is to recognize that government's not very smart. Collectivism in government, they're not capable of making good decisions in education, medicine, or in energy. But free price is important. Take, for instance, corn. You know, we can make ethanol from corn, and that looks like it may have some future. But I also have read some stories where you use almost about 80% of the energy you get from corn to make the corn energy, and that if you didn't have special subsidies, we wouldn't even be talking about corn if it were left to the market. Corn gets subsidies, but sugarcane doesn't. You know, and so that doesn't make any sense, and the market has to sort these out. But what you need to do is get the government out of the way and not subsidize anything. So today, we have our corporations, whether they're energy corporations or whatever, and they want an alternative fuel to come in. They want you to pay for it. I want alternative fuels, and we would get it if you let the pricing structure take care of it. I don't worry about running out of oil. Alternative fuels would come in if you just let the market work.
Mike, thank you for your question.